Okay.
Hi guys, welcome back to Hear Our Voices. It's your host Kay Did coming back to you one more time. So guys, please follow us on social media. By the time this video come out, in a couple of weeks, because right now it's still in October, this might come in November, I would assume. So the way, depending on how I edit things, we have a giveaway. So by now you have heard about it. Please join in. Follow us on all our social media platforms. As you know already, it's $150 gift card. So you to be a part of this, I'm gonna tell you a little bit of the criteria that like the last giveaway. You have to actually be in a shelter, a family shelter in New York City, and we'll verify this information. We have ways, and that's the one way you can be a part of this giveaway. So you can we before we had on a restaurant, but now we was like, let's give people gift cards, what they could spend on whatever they want to spend it on, or whatever can help you and your family at this moment. So also thank you for watching. Thank you for supporting us on this journey. And please follow us on all social media platforms because by then you would have heard about the giveaway because I would have posted on there by now. Also, follow the Spanish podcast if you can understand or speak Spanish. That would be great. They come out once a month on the fourth Wednesday of the month. Follow us on TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube. I'm constantly on Instagram. I'm just saying, if you have any questions, concern, if you don't want to write, because right now on if you're listening to me, they don't have comments down below. But if you want to talk to me personally, you can go in the link down below. It'll have everything there, but it has my personal information there too. If you just want to go into the actual HOV and whoever listens to it, because we have a new fellow coming on and she'll be helping me with those things. You can put your information there. Any questions you might have, if I know the answer, I'll tell you. If I don't, I will find it out for you. I'm just saying, I don't know everything. Nobody knows everything. So anything I don't know, I will definitely ask somebody who's qualified to do it. But as you can see on the screen, we have a guest today, which I'm so excited about. Her name is Anne. Um, I can't wait for you to meet her. I met her a couple of weeks ago. Well, probably a week now, right? Probably not a couple, but like a week. It was last week Friday, I believe. And she's gonna share her story today. And this is actually her first time sharing her story. And I just can't wait to get into it. But I want her to tell you a little bit about herself now and where she is in her life before you can hear her story. So Anne, tell us what you do.
Kadisha, thank you so much for inviting me into this and for all your warmth and grace. I am a researcher. I am at Chapin Hall at the University of Chicago. My work and the work of our whole team is around ending youth homelessness. And increasingly, we understand the intergenerational nature of homelessness.
Right.
So we're creeping in the direction of child and family and youth homelessness because we all know that there are some vicious cycles that the structural inequities that we live with have placed a lot of people in this country. And so if you had asked me when I was in when I was still in my education, would I end up being a full-time researcher? I would have laughed at you. But I'm not gonna sit in your office and not talk to people researcher. I
Right.
thrive on my interactions with people and at Chapin Hall. And throughout my career, the work I've done has been in community and with community. And I have learned more in and with community than all my years in graduate school. I can promise you that.
Hands-on work is definitely the key of all things. So I think it's amazing. I know you might not know the stat like of numbers at the top of your head right now, but like I said all the time, as she's a researcher, she knows data and information like that. But out of all the populations of homelessness, which I know the answer already, which is the highest population of homelessness based on data that you have and that you know about?
Well, my expertise is more in child and family and youth homelessness. So I should say, what I don't know that much about is veterans and single adult homelessness.
Got
What
it.
I can tell you is that um, we did a study, oh, it's getting old now, it's 5 or 6 years old. And we looked at the incidence and prevalence of youth homelessness and found that 1 in 10 young people between the ages of 18 and 25 experience some form of homelessness.
Right.
I'm going to let that sink in. And most of your listeners might not be surprised. But if I'm out in the general public and I say that to people, they're dumbfounded. They don't
Right.
believe it. 1 in 30 young people between the ages of 13 and 18 experience some form of homelessness. And that includes what we all think of as homelessness. Most of us think of as homelessness on the street, in your car, sleeping in a train station. It also includes being doubled up and couch surfing. Couch surfing could sound like this alluring thing that you do through an app and travel the world. This is
Right.
what we're talking about.
Right.
We're talking about people who are forced and not volunteering or by choice living with other people. And those circumstances are highly precarious because you never know when your friend or your auntie or a pandemic will force circumstances to change and suddenly you are out on the street, or you're hoping that someone else will have the resources and offer the generosity of their home. And to be clear, being in someone else's space is not the same as being in your own. You are always on guard. So I think it's easy to think of homelessness as this literal form, and yet a lot of people in this country experience different forms of homelessness.
Right. So I'll tell you the answer. For New York City, the biggest population of homelessness, because they do census on street homeless, and it's kind of harder to do them because they can go anywhere they wonder, and they don't have like a particular number, as you know. And you go in the shelter system in New York City, you have a number that kind of tracks you when you get in the system, like a social security number for homelessness, basically. But the number with the highest number is family homelessness, and the age in New York City with the most homelessness with kids are under, I want to say, the age of 5. Was it 3? It's one of those. It's very low numbers. But
I think
she
it's great.
also is from Chicago. Statistics are very different, but in general, as she said, it was 13 or 15. You said 13 to 25, right?
Mhm.
So
Mhm.
think about that number. Think about this. Technically, your legal age as an adult, their mind is not even developed yet, is 18. That means from 13 to 18, technically, all right, say 13 to 17, because you're an adult when you're 18, right? 13, 17, their kid is with their parent most time, or they're on the street. When they should, that's legally they're supposed to be with ACS or foster care if they're not with their home. That means either their family structure is so bad that they're on the street or in a shelter with their family member, or they're by themselves on the street by themselves where nobody can actually protect them, take care of them. Can you imagine adults are on the street and getting sexual harassed, getting raped, all these things? Can you imagine a child? Not even 18-year-old. I'm not saying people who are over 18 should get raped. I'm just saying, can you imagine a child that happening to, who's not properly developed in the mind or body properly? And it's, if anything that happens to you, no matter what age it happens, it affects you until you die. So you're with this trigger in your head, even with therapy, until you die. People have PTSD from regular wars. And mind you, they sign up for this thing. You don't sign up to get raped. You don't sign up to get homeless, to be homeless. So just think about this when you look at somebody and you try to judge them on the street. And granted, I think we all do, especially if we see somebody looking kind of rough and we're like, oh my gosh. But we got to think about, they didn't want this. They didn't wake up as a child thinking, this is going to be my life when I get older. People usually think of having the white picket fence and the dog, maybe a kid if you don't like that, a little fish, goldfish, a big family. If a person who likes small family, probably just their partner, maybe one child. And at this point, people's pets are like their child. And they don't think of, when I get older, I'm going to be sleeping on the street. I'm going to be sleeping in the train. I'm going to be sleeping in the park. I'm going to have a kid and be in a DV situation that I have to run away and leave all the stuff that I know behind, but run with my kid to make sure we're alive. We don't think about that. Even when people who grew up in these situations, because they don't know that it's not normal to live that way, they don't think about that's how their future is going to be. And as she said before, things like this is our cycle. Until you know how to break the cycle, it stays there forever. But I just want to get into that and the work that she does, and that she brings clarity to people about the information, because a lot of people just walk around because it's not their reality. They don't think about what's actually happening out in the world and out in people's spaces. So I'm happy that she does her job and to enlighten people like me and everybody else about what's really out there and what the numbers are. So yes.
Thank you,
So
Indy.
so I want to get into her story today. You heard where she is, what she's doing, and looking at her, you would think she doesn't have any problems, because that's what people think. Like, they think certain people don't have certain things, and that's honestly not the truth. You can't look at a person to see what they actually go through. And looking at her, you just say she's a normal person. Nothing. She had a fine childhood. She grew up amazingly. A house, probably 2 parents. That's what people probably think by looking at her. But I want to get into her story today so she could tell you what actually happened to her to make her become the strong woman that we see today. So, can you tell us a little bit about your childhood and get into your story a little bit for me, please?
Sure. So I grew up in a relatively small working class town in New Jersey. Yes, I'm a Jersey girl. Um, I I'm the fourth of five children, um, Irish Catholic background, and my family. I'd like to say everything was fabulous until, but the
Right,
truth is, there are roots in these things, and I think you said it beautifully, Kadisha. We all sort of think the way we grew up is normal.
right.
And I was doing this work a long time before I realized some things about myself and my family. And so when I was in fourth grade, which would make me what, nine or so, nine or
9
10.
going to 10, yeah. My daughter's in third and she's 8.
So my parents' marriage was deteriorating clearly for years, but I mean, at this point, I'm 9 years old.
Right.
Um, my father had was a very severe alcoholic, and I, as these things go, you become an adult and you look back on it. Marital conflict. Uh, he served in World War II. I think who knows what. I mean, he
Right,
literally those folks didn't talk about their experiences. I know he had some traumatic experiences.
right,
I know he lost people very close to him in the war.
right,
So who knows how this all comes together? I never really talked to my father about those things. I regret that. But he was a very serious alcoholic. Later went into recovery, did all the steps, and at the time of his death, I had a very close and loving relationship with him,
right.
and he made amends. But at that time, the household was pretty rough. My oldest two siblings were a lot older, and so it was three of us at home. I was in the middle, and there was a lot of conflict, a lot of fighting. There were physical fights in the house. Um, and one night, and my father would, he sort of didn't know where he was. He came home really late. I didn't understand alcoholism. We didn't
Right.
talk about it. I mean, I knew there was a whole lot of martinis. I knew how to make a martini at a very young age. Um, so that's some serious drinking there. And Irish culture has a tendency to minimize. I mean, lots of cultures do, but it's particular to the Irish. There was there is and remain the longstanding remnants of basically a civil war in Ireland that's called the Troubles. I mean,
Oh,
right? So that's talk about minimizing. And in my family, when someone would say, he has a little problem with the drink, or he
right,
has quite a problem with the drink, that means someone is just like falling down drunk in public. So this notion of minimizing things, I think, is very much a part of the story, and you just don't talk about it.
right,
So I knew things were wrong, but I didn't even talk about it with my siblings.
right.
So one night, things were really bad. It was a school night. I was awakened by my parents arguing. Um, my father had a service revolver. I knew where it was. The kids always know where the gun is. Um,
Right.
it was in my parents' closet. To this day, I could see it. I knew where the bullets were. And there was discussion. I mean, I was literally at the top of the stairs, like trying to hear what was going on, and the gun was mentioned. Um, and I say all of this like I was like, but I wasn't. I was like, okay,
You're
the
so
gun.
calm. You're so used to this narrative of DV. Technically, this is if you are listening and not even catching on what she's saying, because she's saying it so calmly. She's a child who's literally watching DV happen every day, basically with alcoholism. Sorry to interrupt, but people have to realize, granted, people argue, but when it gets out of hand, then it's a problem. And that is a form of abuse. Right now we're in domestic violence month and we're about to end, but I'm just making sure you can hear the nuances of her stories. It's not like, and because she's so used to it, she's like, I'm listening, but it's not like she's hiding and listening. She's like up on the steps and listening to this happening. And yeah, we're talking, Shirley, and then a gun. Like, it's so normal. And because you're a kid and this happens every day, you think it's normal, but it's not. But continue. I'm so sorry. It's just,
Oh,
oh,
no, it's important clarity because I don't always hear it myself. I mean, there was an occasion where my father and my older brother got into a physical fight. There were wounds, and I don't know if there were stitches or shit, but it was scared. I remember being scared at that. But anyway, so that particular night, so what did I do? I went and I found the gun and I moved it to my room because of course that's what you would do. I mean, it's crazy, right?
right.
And my mother came upstairs and I heard her go into the room. I mean, it wasn't that big a house. Like you got to the top of the stairs and it was like door, door, door.
Right.
My bedroom was right across from my parents' bedroom. I knew where my mother was going. She was going into the closet to look for the gun. So,
Wow.
and she's not finding it. And I'm aware she's not finding it. So now I'm scared. Now I'm scared, which is, think about that.
Yeah.
I'm scared I'm going to get in trouble. So my mother comes in. Have you seen the gun? You know where the gun is? And I was like,
It can seem so normal too. Have you seen the gun? Like,
right. Have you seen the gun? You know where your
right.
father's gun is? Um, and then my parents always had this thing. They would ask you once, and if they think you're not really maybe telling the truth, they would say, "I'm going to ask you again, and I'm going to really ask you to tell the authentic truth."
Right.
So that question was asked, and she was like, "Do you know where the gun is?" And I nodded, and I honestly don't remember. Like it's all sort of
A blur.
flashes, and
Right.
so next thing I know, I'm being awakened. Next thing I remember, I'm being awakened for school in the morning. I went to Catholic school. I put my little uniform on, and I wasn't. We didn't drive to. We weren't driven to school. We either took a bus or walked. And I was dropped off at school, and like something was different. I didn't know what was different. And then right before I get out of the car, my mother said, I'll pick you up or someone will pick you up today, but things will probably be different from here on. And I was like,
Wow.
okay. End of the day, I have no idea who picked me up, but I remember we stayed with a friend of my mother's. And I also remember I sort of had a crush on her son, and he was really,
Ooh.
really nice to me. I mean, I was still a girl, right? He was really, really sweet to me, and we watched TV, and he let me watch what I wanted to watch. I have no idea if we stayed there for one night or 10 nights or two, whatever. And then we moved in with my grandmother. And my grandmother lived up the street from the little Catholic school that I went to.
Okay.
And I think my cousin Debbie was also living there, who was also in a very problematic relationship. So this isn't just us, right?
Right.
And my grandmother was, there's no other way to say this. My grandmother was not a nice person.
Okay.
And she picked on me, like really picked on me. So being there, I don't think she did it as much in front of my mother because I don't think my mother would have stood for that, but I mean, she really picked on me. Like it's a running joke now, again, minimizing, but
Oh my
also this is what
God.
we do.
Right.
And so it was really hard to be there. And my mother, we went from two incomes to one. My father, I guess he was just in the house drinking all day, every day. He lost his job. The house was a disaster. I couldn't tell you if it was days, weeks, or months. I think it was a couple of years, probably.
Right.
I was ashamed of my father's alcoholism, even though I didn't fully understand what it was. I was ashamed that we were living with my grandmother. I was ashamed that my parents were separating. I never told anyone.
Mm.
I didn't tell my bestie, Karen. I mean, I
Hi,
think the whole
Karen.
town knew. Karen
Right.
was awesome. I think Karen knew for a while and she just kind of got closer to me and invited me over a lot. She,
A
you
real
know,
friend. That's a real friend. Shout out to you, Karen.
shout out to Karen McMahon. Yep. So it was, the shame around it was extraordinary. And people laugh at me, you'll laugh at this too. Like, I was a painfully shy child.
Yeah.
When you spent 2 days with me, it means I'm not shy. I
Right.
was painfully shy. I was afraid to pay for things at the register because the attention was overbearing.
Oh,
Um,
wow.
who knows how this all mixes in with the rest of it. But so we were
Right.
doubled up for a long time. We were doubled up with a really unhappy person who was verbally abusive to me, my grandmother, and what were my siblings going to do? Again, like, my mother just passed this year, which honestly maybe
Right.
freed me up to have this conversation. I just am realizing, I never really we all sort of joked and laughed about it, but I never asked her, like, why. I mean, my mother was the sweetest lady, and I guess sometimes that's what happens if you're raised by someone who's kind of cruel, you turn it into kindness.
Okay.
So we lived there for I don't know how long. I refused to see my father. um, he went into a fancy rehab, then he went into a less fancy
Mm.
rehab. He ended up in a state hospital,
Mm.
Marlboro. If you're from New Jersey, you know what Marlboro Hospital is. That was like the pinnacle of my shame. And my shame was so overwhelming that I couldn't engage. I couldn't talk about it. I couldn't acknowledge any of this at all. I mean, suffice to say that there are probably some adults in my life who should have been talking to me about this, and maybe they
Right.
did, and I was just so clammed up I couldn't respond.
They probably see it as a problem, though. You got to think about that. I feel like generations back, they don't see a lot of things as a problem, and then society has to pull it into reality 20 years later, like, no, maybe you shouldn't be beating up your child while you're drinking. That's probably not the right thing to do. Maybe you shouldn't be arguing around your children because, and if you do say something was, controversial in front of your children, you shouldn't be yelling and screaming because your children are going to do the same thing that you're doing to somebody else when they get older. Because kids are sponges. They take everything that you do, they take it in. Even if you say not to do it, that's the thing they're doing because they see that you're doing that thing. So you have to be very conscious about that. I'm happy that you wasn't that lonely. You had Karen, and I wonder what's wrong with your grandmother so much that she did that. But I'm also thinking, I don't know how long you don't, because you was a child when it happened, how long your mother actually you know, went on with this because it takes a lot to actually leave. A lot of people are in DV situations. It's hard for them to leave, and for her to have that courage to actually leave. How I want to like. It seemed like it happened all the time. So she finally left to make sure that you guys have a better life, and she's probably tired of the craziness happening to you.
I
Um,
think she managed to talk herself into tolerating the alcoholism, but when the physical threat of when she could not ensure the safety of herself and her children, I mean, a gun,
right.
um, it had to be. And this is a long time ago. And my mother was a high school nurse at my high school. Thank you very
Um,
much. I couldn't do anything. I did some things.
right.
Uh, but she couldn't afford a home.
Right.
And we're lucky. I mean, my mother had a job. She was a nurse. She was a nurse in World War II. I mean, not in the war, but
Yeah, I
here.
know what you mean.
And so she worked 2, 3 jobs, saved up money. While we all lived with my grandmother, we called her Gram. We lived at Gram's, and until my mother had enough money, and then she still worked 2 and 3 jobs to be able to afford the house. And I look back and see that she was depressed. She was angry. She was all the things that you would expect her to be. She didn't go into therapy. She went into therapy in her 70s.
Oh, that's
Um,
kudos to mom because for that age to do anything like that is a lot. She's been through a lot, so I'm proud of her.
I'm really proud of my mother. Later, not during that time in my life, but later I lost a brother to suicide. He took his own life. Um, that, um, it's all mixed up together in a family, and how someone becomes that hopeless is, I mean, he had depression clearly, but I think there are many things that happened along the way in my family that opened the door, if you will, for him to fall that far and not feel like he was just without hope.
Right.
Um, and my mother, I mean, this is again to me. So I just spent some time in Ireland for the first time in September, actually,
Ooh.
and it was like it was suddenly being home in a crazy way. And I met all these Irish women that were these incredibly strong people. And the gift of gab, right? And the gift of gab isn't just that you talk a lot, it's you know how to tell a story. And so the stories I heard about the troubles, the stories I heard about people's drinking, all of it, it was just, I was like, wow, these really are my people. Now I understand a lot of it. But I came a long way in life before. I mean, honestly, I didn't really realize that we were doubled up and technically homeless
Right.
until a couple years ago. I mean,
Right.
I'm doing this work. I've been working on child and family homelessness for 20 years.
Right.
And we're lucky, honestly. Like I got an education. I had people in my life. I had teachers. I had people in my life who just sort of looked out for me. My seventh grade teacher, Mrs. Albanese, she looked out for me. She very subtly pushed me to do things that I was afraid to do
Right.
and made me feel special. I had an auntie who made me feel special. And I think now I meet young people and families who are experiencing homelessness. And I think that's one of the things that I was afforded that many are not, is that there's somebody in this world who thinks you're special and tells you. Um, I mean, there were lots of people in my family, my older sister, but my older brother and sister were, the spread in my family between the oldest and the youngest is 16 or 17 years.
That's a big gap.
So my oldest brother and sister, they were gone before I was like a thinking being. They
Right.
were they were out of the house, 18, 17, whatever. So it almost feels like we had two sets of, like, I had two sets of siblings, and
Right.
they were not present, my older brother and sister, for the worst of what went down with my parents.
Got it.
But it had to be on its way all along. Now that I'm an adult, and I can see that.
It's crazy that happened. I'm sorry about your brother again. It
Thank
must
you.
have been very lonely for him to really do that to himself. And people don't understand, like even myself, when I talk about my homeless experience, I didn't think of doubled up. Honestly, probably even this year, this is kind of when I really delved into it. And I thought about I thought about this week. I was like, I was homeless off and on from 2015, 2018. And usually the only time I count is from like 2016,
Mm.
probably 2018. I don't count the first time it
With
happened.
staying with people?
I don't count it because I was on somebody's couch and I was like, I never thought about it. And I'm like, no. And the thing about it, I do the podcast, so it's not like I don't know the information. I know the information. It's just thinking about, when we all think about homelessness, we only think about shelters, and sometimes we won't think about that. We think only about on people on the street. And so we have to
Right.
really think about it. If you don't have your own place and your own key, you don't have your own home. So that's the thing.
And you can't relax. You are a guest in someone else's home.
Right.
And that is, I think, one of the most, I mean, I a young person that I met who in San Francisco who's experiencing homelessness is said that to me, and I I think I flinched because it put words around something that my grandmother, all like you can't relax. It's not your space. It's not yours. And so I just, Khadijah, I want to say, like, I had this incredible shame as a child. I mean, I hope the world has changed. I don't think it has changed that much. There is nothing shameful here. I mean, it's a shame. It's a shame that as a nation, we allow this to happen. We have programmed this to happen. We enable it through policy. We have enabled it since the beginning, since before we were a country. We redline, we segregate, we make excuses for it, we NIMBY, all of these things. And it doesn't have to be like this. There's enough that we don't have a limited quantity of talent or special or even money and resources. There's plenty for everyone. And there's no reason for, I mean, I don't have to tell you this. We know that LGBTQ young people, identifying young people are much more likely, Black LGBTQ plus identifying young people are 8 times more likely than a straight white young person to experience homelessness. And those risks are multiplicative and cumulative, and it has to do with things that we can change, because it's really about a mindset. And I'm a white woman and I have had enormous privilege in my life. I'm not saying I've not had to work hard. And as a woman in a world in a field that has been historically very white male dominated, I've had my moments, and that's how you learn. That's one of the ways you learn about the experiences of other people and the intersectionalities that we all should have awareness of. But you have to be willing to open your eyes. And I'll be honest, it wasn't really like that. I remember sitting in a meeting one day and being like, oh my gosh, my family, and like, if I tell my siblings about this, they're going to be like, we weren't homeless.
They're not going to get it.
Right. So who knows if this is going to make the rounds around the barrels. because I think there's still such shame attached to it.
Right.
No, like you say, who sits in grade school and thinks I want to be homeless when I grow up? Nobody. Exactly. Nobody ever thought that. And yet we can prevent this.
Right.
And it's traumatic. And mostly what we do in this country is very reactive. We can prevent this.
Yes, it's so true.
I mean, something like 60 some odd % of the young people who call the National Runaway Safeline are housed when they call.
Oh, wow. That's good.
Right. And I mean, we don't know we know what happens with some of them, but you know what I'm saying? We don't really know what happens. But think about that as a missed opportunity.
Right.
Some of them are, in precarious situations. Some of them are in the middle of a crisis. And I mean, what I've also learned is that, particularly for young people, there's crisis after crisis, and you don't know what crisis is going to be. The
breaking point. Yeah, it's true. And it's sad.
That's true of my family too.
Right.
Like you said about my mother, what was it? I don't know. She got to her breaking point.
It's so true, like you were saying, because all right, I rented a room because I couldn't afford an apartment after I had my daughter. And I stayed at this other lady's house for like less than a month, and then I got to a room. I got out the hospital and things like that. And even though technically, because that part I don't consider homeless, I was technically paying rent to her, but it wasn't my place. I'm living it's 3 bedrooms, and I'm paying rent there. So it's not like it's a family. I don't really know her. She's a family member of somebody I actually know, but I never met her before. And living there was like terror. At first it was fine because at nighttime when I was there, she was working, So I was good. She wasn't there, and her daughter was there, and her daughter is like probably 10 years older than me or so, and she was fine. When the mom came and stopped working night shifts and started working in the day, her being home was horrible. She make you feel uncomfortable. Because I don't know if everybody does it, boil the baby bottles to make sure it's sanitized
You
and
had
make
an
sure clothes are
infant at
clean.
this time? You had a newborn?
I had a newborn, horrible. My daughter would cry. The daughter will hit on the wall to stop my baby from crying. She said, "Shut her up." I'm like, she's a baby. How can you shut up a baby? It doesn't make sense. What you're saying does not make. And my daughter, mind you, my daughter, out of most babies that I know, didn't cry that often. So when she did cry, there's really something wrong with her. My daughter, people, when I first was for the first, I think 11 months, you couldn't tell she was in the house because she was that quiet. So when she cried, you knew that was a problem with her. And she would come in the room. The lady has a key. I didn't know she had a key to my room at one point. She'll come in the room when I'm not there. One time I thought it was crazy because I have everything. I have my soap on the floor and things like that. So I see my phone coming. I'm like, why is it on the floor? I'm like, did it fall over? I didn't realize I just left it. I'm like, no, but I would have saw it before I left this morning. So I was like, all right, let me forget about it. So and then I see it happen again. I was like, you know what? Let me put it in a bag. So this time I know that it wouldn't be. Then I came home and I'm like, no, she's coming in my room every day to waste my soap on the floor that I paid for. And I'm paying her rent. She would do things like that. Um, because of that, I had to have my social security card. Like I would move it around my room so she couldn't find. It was like living
Right,
like that
right,
is
right.
horrible.
You weren't safe.
And because one time she came in the room yelling at me for something that her daughter did, but she thought it was me. I'm like, that wasn't me. And then she asked her daughter, she realized it was her daughter. And I'm like, she didn't even knock on the door. She took her key, me and my baby on the bed, and she just opened the door for my room. And I'm like, that's how I found out she had my keys. And I'm like, why would you have keys for my room if I'm paying rent here? I don't understand why you have two, like, it doesn't make sense. So I realized that she was coming in.
Violation,
Yeah. I didn't want to
violation.
get her in trouble because I know the
Right.
person who she's like. I'm like, I felt unsafe. Like at nighttime, I would have stuff behind the door so in case she came in, I could hear. And I never slept well because of that. I was always on eggshells. I stopped making food in her house. I could admit, I messed up one of her pots by accident. It wasn't on purpose. I didn't know any better. I took a fork to the pot. I was used to doing that the house I grew up in, and I messed up her pot. I said I'll pay for it. She didn't want it. I'm like, whatever. So I could say I'm not saying the perfect person. This is my first time being on my own, other than college.
Hey, he
So college
wasn't
was
messing up a
different,
pot.
right? And it was just, it was a lot. It was just a lot of contention. She didn't like me taking showers at nighttime, which I understand because sometimes I take it too late, but she wouldn't let me in the bathroom until a certain time. So it's like I have to do it 11, 12 o'clock at night because she'll have a problem. Then people say, take a shower in the morning. I don't go to sleep in my clothes from outside. So I have to take a shower, then go to my bed, clean up my baby and everything. And it was just like a problem for her. You take a shower too late. Her daughter would hear me. I usually take my daughter with me. It's very rare I leave her in the bed. I was in the room. I didn't know what they're gonna do to my daughter. I just didn't trust it. I'll take my daughter with me and all our stuff in our hands in the bathroom. And they will hear me coming and opening the door and they'll run to the bathroom because they're closer to me than the bathroom. It was like the daughter's room, it was a bathroom, the daughter's room, my room, and the mom was over here. They would literally, if they hear me open my door and they see me, they know what time I usually come out for my shower. They would run into the bathroom. So I have to wait till they come out to go to the bathroom. It was, I thought I was going crazy one time. I'm like, I feel like somebody's watching me when I'm taking my shower. And I'm like, I used to leave my daughter's, obviously not safe, her car seat by the door. So if somebody opens it, it would hit. But I was
Right.
like, you know what? I'm not going to do that anymore. Because it started getting really bad in my house. So I kept the car seat. It was a long kind of thing in the door, and there was a tub, and then there's the toilet. So I kept my daughter closer to the shower just in case. So every night, and she would hate me wetting up the floor. But I'm like, I feel like somebody's watching me. I don't know what it is. I feel like somebody's coming here and watching me. Why did one day I caught the daughter opening the door to the bathroom? The door to the bathroom did not lock. Opening the door to the bathroom while I was in the shower. I'm like, why are you in here? Close the door. So I'm like, was that happening all the time? That's why I felt like somebody's watching me all the time, taking a shower, and I did not realize it. And I'm like, it was horrible. It was horrible. So living with people, even when you're paying rent, that's I don't like people like other than dorms, like colleges. I don't tell people to go live with other people if they don't have to. It's better to have your own space. You have your own place of mind. Your food is not going to go missing. You're not sure. Like I was
Yeah.
boiling water for my daughter, And I didn't know she put. I'm so paranoid because she's out of her mind. I wasn't sure she put stuff in the water, so I got a kettle for my room to boil her water so she could drink. So I didn't know if she's gonna. And if she saw the kettle, she said, "You got a kettle in the room." I'm like, "But I can't do my daughter's stuff in peace in the kitchen." So I stopped cooking food there for months. I had to always buy food out, and it felt like I was honestly in the shelter because that's how I was in the shelter. I had to buy food all the time. I got to have a stove there, so it was just like it was a lot. It was a lot, and me and her just did not. I was so happy. I was like, if she wanted me to go, I was like, I want to go, but I was like, I can afford. I told her I can afford to be on my own in this thing. I was like, you're gonna have to give me an eviction to get out. She didn't want to do the eviction because I'm gonna tell you
Oh,
the
right,
sentiments
right,
of
right.
that also.
Yeah. So
Half
you
wouldn't
were
let me in
forced
the
into,
shelter
right,
without an
right.
eviction, and at the time they told me that I need I didn't feel safe there, but I also didn't want to put it on a police report because of who she's related to. So
Come
because
back
of,
to
I didn't do a police
you.
report, and that would have got me into the shelter automatically for probably DV, honestly, because I felt unsafe at my environment. But I didn't want to go that route because of who she was to somebody. She's somebody aunt to me. So I was like, I didn't want to bother doing that. So I was like, I'll stick it out. I'm like, you have to evict me. If I can't get evicted, I can't go anywhere. There's nowhere for me to go. And at one point, this is what I'm telling you guys. Also, always have receipts when you do your rent.
Mhm.
Make sure you always get a receipt. Make sure it's always a paper trail. Thank God I
Mhm.
did it because she can't say I didn't pay her rent. And I also send my checks through the mail. I didn't give nothing. I didn't get no check written because that's not on a paper trail for me. And if they give you do give a check, make sure they give you a receipt back. What I always did, I
Take a
had
picture
Chase
of
and I
it.
still do. Huh?
Take a picture of it because those little pieces of paper are just,
That's true. Pictures are always much better. That's what I take pictures of everything. Cards, and I did with
yep,
your card. I took a picture, got no, I'm probably gonna lose it, but a
yep,
picture
yep.
be in Google. I promise you that. And I would send because you could send checks through Chase. So Chase will send it. You just make sure you send it like doing enough time to get to there by the first to your landlord. So it could be a paper trail. And then the other, I paid one half, and then the other half HRA paid. Which they, as if you don't know, they pay their stuff kind of shifty. But at this time, it was before Corona, so it was a little bit better. But it was, it still was on the shaky side. So if it was a holiday, it's gonna be late because of the holiday and stuff like that. So it wasn't that bad, but sometimes it was kind of about it. So she was saying, went to housing court. She said, "Oh, I don't have the rent." I'm like, "No." She gave me. I didn't have the key for the mailbox. She gave me. She'll give me my mail when she wanted to. On top of that, which is, I'm pretty sure that's against the law, but whatever. She gave me the stuff and say I didn't pay her, but I'm like, these are the checks from Chase that you giving you that I sent to you. I told the judge I couldn't get in the mailbox without her because she has a lot. That means I paid you. You just didn't take your money. You didn't want to put it in the account. And by the time she did all of that, all these checks were actually, after, I think it's 90 days they give for a check. You couldn't even use it anymore. So I'm like, what's gonna happen with that? So the judge said, the part that she didn't take, I didn't have to pay that back because it wasn't my fault that she
All
didn't
right.
cash these checks. That's on you. I sent it to you in your name. You're supposed to cash it. It doesn't make sense. But he said the HRA checks, even though she didn't cash those because it's from the city, even those after 90 days, she could take those and they will give it back to her. I'm like, okay, that's fine with me. But
Not
also
your
that ended up biting me in the butt because if you don't know for city FEPS, you have to have an eviction. That's one of the things, like one of the eligibility things. And also you need to have owed your landlord money at the time. I think now it's about a bit different because I didn't owe her any money, but I only had the eviction. I can get into shelter, but I couldn't get the voucher. And I knew that after. I'm like, wow. So because I didn't owe her money either, I never got my eviction on my credit score, which is apparently it's what I think it goes on your credit. It goes somewhere,
That's,
but
oh
it's not in
yeah.
the system. So I guess it worked out for me in the long run because if I want to get like a house, they won't look at so far. I'm like, oh, you having this eviction. I don't know how they do with the whole house thing. I know some of they look at your credit and all that. So I'm happy for that, but I was unhappy I didn't get the city FEPS. But everything happens for a reason. I got NYCHA, and that's actually better than city FEPS. The buildings are some of them are kind of cruddy, but it's better than having only a 5-year stance of where I live. So it worked out. But yeah, living with people sometimes, I'm not saying everybody's horrible, but just having your own space is amazing. It really is. Like having a place to cook, even if you don't want to cook, place to order, it doesn't matter. It just, you feel more comfortable, you feel more relaxed. Your brain is not working as much. Am I doing this wrong? And it's like, am I breathing? Literally, if I'm breathing wrong, is the person gonna be annoyed about it? Like example, my
Right.
baby's a baby, she's crying. That shouldn't be a problem for you if she's crying. It's a baby. That's what they do. And you knew that I had a baby before I came in. Like I said, a surprise, like, hey, I got a baby. I came in here with her. It wasn't like I got pregnant there and had the baby there. I moved in with the baby in my hand. I moved in when she was I want to say 1.5. Not even, I don't think she was 1 month probably. If she was, I want like the 26th or 27th of September. My daughter's born August 12th. So like a month
Oh,
and change. So she was very young when she moved in. So she
pretty much
knew
newborn.
what to say,
Yeah.
you know? But
Wow.
yeah, I can't imagine like, do you, well, your grandmother's probably, I would assume, dead by now. Do you know why she acts? I'm going to her back to the story. I'm sorry, I got into myself. My bad, guys. Do you know why she probably act that way, or she
I
just
thought about it a lot. So apparently my grandfather was quite the philanderer, as we say in my family, which means he fooled around all the time. He had a
right?
girlfriend that once, many years later, we were driving somewhere. I mean, so, my father, I think after, I don't even know if this one was still there, but he drove me past. So where I grew up is now way more built up, but it's like country roads with like a dive bar, right? So I think
Right,
my father mostly drank in places like that. I
right.
mean, I have cousins and friends that like, excuse me, but they would go, like they'd get a call from the bartender and have to go pick up my father. He'd pissed himself. I mean,
Oh
like
no.
really bad, really bad. So like, how did I think that the whole town didn't know this already? Like, it's
Right.
kind of, anyway, when we drove past one of these bars, my father said, "Oh yeah, that's where Pop's girlfriend, she owned that bar. I was like, Pop's girlfriend?
Right. You know my grandma as his wife? No, his
Yeah,
girlfriend.
yeah." So
Wow.
it was like that. And I think there were others. And so I'm guessing she was, she came. I mean, it was outrageous that my mother got divorced when my mother got divorced. It just wasn't acceptable socially.
Right.
And she couldn't even get a credit card. I mean, now, like
Right.
anybody, if you were a single woman, you couldn't get a credit card. This is like the 1980s. It's not that long ago, says
Wow.
me.
I didn't even think about it. Wow. The years I was
Yeah.
born.
I
Like,
mean, yeah,
that's
you couldn't get a
crazy.
credit card. She had to like get some, I don't even know how she did. She got somebody, we knew somebody who was a lawyer, and my mother got them to write a letter saying that it was
Wow.
discrimination, blah, 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 blah. And I think
Right.
eventually legislation passed to prohibit that. But when I think about like that was the world it was. So my grandmother, I mean, you don't leave your husband, you put up and shut up and you make the whatever. I mean, I think she was deeply unhappy. She was in a really bad car accident. I don't, long before I was born, I think. And I think, was in the hospital for like 6 months or something, really messed up her legs. So I think she probably had chronic pain, which didn't help. She smoked, I mean, she just sat in a chair and smoked a cigarette, and like she would light a cigarette with a cigarette
Oh,
and
I can't.
like that. Marlboros, Marlboro Reds, and then Marlboro Lights. She drank a fair amount of vodka herself until at some point I remember my mother just saying, "You're not drinking vodka anymore." And that was that. So I think none of it helped, but it's just kind of then, I mean, it's weird. Then I remember years later, my mother told me that she had an older sister who died, and that older sister was my grandmother's favorite. Now, I'm sorry,
Wow.
but look, I only have one child, but if I had more than one, I
Right.
learned nobody's your favorite. I'm
Right.
sorry. You don't get to do that. That is, and so my mother always felt like I don't know, like in a one down position. It was two girls and a boy, and my uncle, because he was a boy, the sun rose and set on him.
Right.
And my aunt Claire, who was, she was also, she had very serious health problems during her life, and she died really young. And it's funny, when just a few months ago when my mother was transitioning, I mean, she never talked about Claire really. When she was transitioning from this life into whatever comes next, she was talking to Claire. I remember
Oh
just being like,
wow.
what is in there? What is in there? What did you two have that you did not resolve. And so, I mean, I'm very lucky. Both my parents, when both my parents left this world, I was in a good relationship with them. And I know way too many people who aren't, and it's no fault, this isn't about fault, but I would not, it would be hard. I mean, the world feels, and there's so many things I wished I talked to her about, all these things. And then, at a certain point in the last few years, she wasn't really lucid enough to talk about them, or she would go off and you'd be like, is this real? Or, I mean, who knows? But my grandmother, I never, my mother would just say she was just very unhappy. Like, that's it. Boom. She was just very unhappy. She was an unhappy person. But I'm sorry I never said to her, like, well, why did you, what I would like to have said, like, why did you let her pick on me?
Right.
I didn't do anything wrong. I mean, I'm sure I did things wrong, but I was a kid.
You was a kid, right?
Circumstance. I was 9 years old. I was this little tiny thing. I think of it now and I just felt responsible. Like I always felt like, what did I do wrong? I
Right.
was terrified of her. Like, she sounds like your landlord.
Oh gosh.
She was a great card player, my grandmother. So the ladies would come over for bridge. I loved that because the little old ladies thought I was cute. Right. Not Graham. The little old lady would be like, come here, honey. And like,
Oh
they gave
no.
me candy or like $1 or something.
And the
But
dollar went a long way back in the day. Now a dollar can't buy nothing. Yeah.
So I don't know, what I think it's all part of a generation or generations where you just didn't say, you didn't talk about it, you kept it inside, and that was your job, especially I think for women. I mean, I think that's still true for us, but particularly in those generations, it was your role. You just sucked up the pain and moved on. And I suppose that will always be true to some extent because there's a lot of pain in this life.
Right.
I hope we've learned some things about, back in the day, I started my career as a clinician and I was trained in trauma-focused cognitive behavior therapy. And one of the things that I learned, and after 9/11, when I was living in the New York area, and so a lot of clinicians got trained in trauma-focused cognitive behavior therapy because there were so many traumatized people.
Right.
And I remember learning essentially what you do is when someone has a traumatic experience, it's stored, to simplify, it's stored differently in your brain. It's not encoded the same way. And in my mind, the way that's where flashes come from. I mean, even you could think about, like, I can think about difficult conversations that I had, you're like, I know exactly where I was standing when that happened.
Yes.
Like, I was all activated and like you can really remember it and these flashes of it. And a traumatic experience is that much more. And so what we learned in the training is that it's really important for people to be able to tell their story. And one of the ways of recovering from trauma is to be able to narrate the story. And to narrate the story, you have to be able to bring yourself through the events in your mind and kind of out loud. And so, but it's so overwhelming to, quote, tell the story. You can't tell the story at once and it's all fragmented. So part of the therapy is getting people in a comfortable and centered and relaxed enough state to begin to talk about it. And when it becomes overwhelming and too activating, you step back, you help the person relax, deep breathing, all the things. And then the goal, in some sense, now it might have changed since it was a long time ago, but to this day, it helps me understand how talking about your experience is important. I've worked with a lot of young people, it wasn't that long ago, we expected all forms of people who had trauma to just sit up in front of groups of people and tell their trauma.
Right.
I mean, like, you still have TV commercials where it's like, save this one or that one. And the way you do it is you pull people's, quote, heartstrings by having some person some child with a disability or a medical condition or whatever. I don't know. That's like, it feels very exploitative. And that's
Yeah.
what we did for a long time. And I also know I've worked with a lot of young people who experienced homelessness, who eventually, when they got to a safe and comfortable enough place to tell their story in a safe place of their choosing, with people they trust, and that's a long road to get there,
Right.
that it can help. Because I think you just in this conversation said things to me like, listen, people, like, this is domestic violence, right? And I was, oh, right. Right, right. That part I don't think I'd gotten to.
Right.
So I guess telling the story is in the right place
Right.
is healing, but in the wrong place, it's more pain.
It's true. Definitely true. I'm like, you said your mom was so nice and your grandmother's so mean and your dad was an alcoholic. So it like sometimes people when they live a life like in my mind, I'm thinking, was your mom always an alcoholic when your mom was young? And that's why she picked the husband that she got. But you said your father was also not like this until after the war. Did they meet? I'm thinking so many. I'm thinking of
Right.
how this can be. And also
Yeah.
alcoholism is also like people have more addictive personalities. So is this gonna be like, granted, your grandmother and your father not related, but your mom, did she have and she just didn't go into that, and it's like hopefully you don't get it and then bring it to your daughter. That's what I'm trying to think of, like how the puzzle go, because sometimes we don't want to do certain things, but it's like wired in us in a generational curse kind of way that it end up happening without us realizing. Like I tell myself all the time, I don't want to be like my mom at all. I don't think she was a great mom at all. She maybe tried her best. She did the best with my eyes that she could do, and I think she did that part, taking to the doctors. But she could have been a better parent. She could have talked to me more. People say, "Oh, she's Jamaican and she's older." That's
Right,
no excuse.
right,
I know people who are older than her,
right.
who have kids older than me, and they have wonderful relationships. So I'm not gonna give her that way out. It is what it is. But I saw things that my mother didn't do, and I wanted to make sure me and my daughter don't have the same things. So is it that these things, she saw her mother act this way, she just didn't act that way when she got older, and did it some things pass on to you and to your siblings because of this also?
Phew, that is a good question. Some of it was repeated.
Okay.
It's hard to acknowledge.
Right.
Um, Again, I'll be honest, part later in life, my mother going to therapy, some of it was, it was after my brothers took his own life.
Right.
It was after, I don't know. I think it had something to do with it. I, not in a confrontational way, but I did confront my mother about some things
Right.
that had to do with that part of people. I about not having felt special in my own family, and some what I felt like was I was invisible, um, and it's partly because I was super shy, and sure, she was going through a lot, but there were moments of not neglect in like the child welfare kind of way, but
Right.
yeah,
Emotional neglect. Being
emotional
close.
neglect, and like I wasn't, I don't like, there probably was like, man, my mother was a nurse. There's probably like healthcare missing
Right.
and stuff like that, right? So it's like, and uh, the way she coddled some of my siblings, and gave them what I felt was special favor, and
Right.
there was an incident that happened, and I called her. She called me and told me about something, and I called her back, and I was like, you know what, Mom? I've been like all my life, I have felt this calm, like totally calm. All
Right.
my life, I felt like this, and I don't want to feel like this anymore.
Right.
Like when you do this, this is how I feel, and I just had this moment of clarity, and I was like, and it's and it hurts. And I think you went through this with I've with your own family. Like that
Mhm.
you always felt like you were the invisible one. Like
Right.
Aunt Claire was like, she was special because for whatever reason, and she was so sick all the time. And my uncle was a boy, and there you were in the middle, and no one really paid attention to you, and you took care of everybody. My mother took care of no accident. She was a nurse.
Right.
Sometimes she took care of everybody but us.
Right. And I think
And
that's sometimes, especially with jobs like that, people forget their own family and they take care of everybody else, and their family is left behind. And it's like, no, but I'm taking care of you. Yeah, you're bringing home the money and stuff like that. You're doing your best to make sure we have clothes and food. But the emotional way, make sure I can feel special, talking to me, what about my day. What did Karen and me talk about today? Give me the tea about that. Like those are the things and special times people need and connection. And it sounds like, what it is also, people have different love languages, and
Mhm.
hers is probably helping people. But
Yeah,
even though it's not the people who is closest to her,
yeah.
is the people who are outward, especially because that's the kind of job she went into, and she looked like she did well at it. But the people she loved, she didn't give them that part of the caring and nourishing part of it,
I
because she's
mean,
more about the helps.
my mother was a high school nurse since, I don't know, like the 70s or something. She was doing pro LGBTQ work in the 70s and 80s. Like she had
Wow.
like students would come out to her and she would take care of them. She would take care of young girls who wanted birth control. I mean, it was probably not even legal, I don't know. But she took
It
care of
wasn't
me.
legal.
And she could have gotten in big trouble, but she had she had this mission, if you will. I mean, much I went through a divorce some years ago, and there was a moment where I wasn't sure I had a place to go. I have a family. I could have gone to them. First of all, like one of the things I realized, like I am stubbornly self-reliant. So first of all, I was raised by two parents who grew up during the Depression.
Right.
So they always had, it was like, you never know when the bottom's going to fall out. You always have to have, I always had like a dime or a quarter or whatever in my shoe, always have cash on me. It's a thing. But I think without even totally understanding it, I incorporated all that. Like
Right.
I take care of myself. I don't rely on anybody else. I hate relying on people.
Right.
Me, I have my own money. I learned, you know what? Enough money is safety. You need a certain amount of money to be safe in this world.
Right.
And the next amount of money makes you free, especially women. We need our own money to be safe. You can't be
Right.
relying on anybody else. I mean, I'm talking mostly about men. And then beyond that, money gives you choices. And
Right.
without
It's
enough
true.
money to be safe, you got no choices at all. And with enough money, you got a little bit of freedom to make choices and do things that you want to do for you. And beyond that, there is such a thing as too much money, in my humble opinion.
It's
But
true.
and we all know what that looks like. We're all obsessed with it as a culture. But there was a point in my divorce where I wasn't sure. I could have called anyone in my family. I could have stayed with them. They probably would have given me money. But, like, damn it, I'm not going to do that. But I was shaken to the core. I had my son. I did not know where we were going to go. And it didn't just threaten my sense of self and all those things that I just told you about, but
Right.
my sense of motherhood. And it threatened, I mean,
Right.
uh, I was like, okay, um, this is not, and I was with a friend at the moment this hit me, and she was like, we got this, we got this, we got this, because she saw me. I mean, I was weeping, and then all of a sudden I stopped, and I was like, no, this is not happening. This is not happening to me.
Right.
But I'm educated at that point. I had a PhD, I had a job. I just couldn't afford. I mean, I really like didn't think I couldn't afford a place in the place that wouldn't let my son go to the same school and the same lovely neighborhood and all that stuff. And like, oh,
Right.
poor me. But it threatened my sense of motherhood in this. We called my mother the original lioness. Like everything I've just said, but you mess with one of the cubs in my family, you
Right.
mess with the whole pride. So
Right.
watch out. We are fiercely, when my brother died, we came together. There was no
Same.
there was no shame. We were not going to hide this. We were going to talk about his depression. We were going to he was a he was an assistant DA in New
Oh,
York City.
wow.
So it was public, it was on the news, it was in the
Mm.
paper, and it was just like, okay. we're doing this. So, you know, I think we learned some things. I think we all learned some things along the way, and principally my
Right.
mother, who frankly, after my brother died, my mother started a home visiting program for families newly bereaved by suicide. So anybody who's
Mm,
out there, this still exists
definitely.
today,
Okay.
because when someone you love takes their own life, you are left with, you are swimming in an ocean of what ifs, and the waves are crashing over you, and you just keep thinking about how it could be different, because the thing that has happened, and this is true about, pick a trauma, the thing that has happened is the thing you want to undo more than anything else.
Right.
If only I had, and you could, do you do it, you know, we all do it about the things that happen to us in our lives. If only I'd done this, if only I'd done that. What if I had, if I hadn't come from this? So you sit with those, and my mother visited hundreds of families who had just lost a loved one. And
Mm,
there were days I was like, I don't even know how you do that. But that's how she got her strength from
right.
helping. You're right. That was her love language.
It is. It is. It really what you could tell because she really seemed like she, from what you're telling me, loved her job and she helped everybody. And for her to feel better, it makes it to help others put out more than she got in. And sometimes the people who she loved the most didn't get as much as her because she's helping other people. And sometimes they get neglected and they feel away. But it's like you help everybody else, but what about me? What about me? And that's what happens to a lot of people like that. And if they don't realize it, people go on years, especially children will go on years feeling like nobody loves them as much. And they put this on, and it's like when they get older, they put it on into actual life. And it's like, yeah, so you have to be very careful, guys. So we impact a lot. Guys, if 988, I want to say, or is it 899? It's gonna be in the description below. If you're a person
Okay.
who is suffering with suicide thoughts, things like that, call that number. Everything will be down below, I promise. Well, the person who edits this with the description will make sure it's done. Um, if you're a person who struggles with that, or even a person even have a person with a disability who, you know, somebody who's just, you know, if you see somebody who's, instead of calling the police, please call this number, because the police, a lot of them are not trained to help with this situation.
Right.
Call that number and they'll be able to send somebody, depending on which area has more things than others. It should be in all the states that have it, from what I understand, and they'll be able to help you. If you're a person who is struggling, the people you leave behind is going to worry, be sad, and you might not think that you have nobody to actually. I think sometimes, like when I die, who's gonna be upset about it? Of course, my daughter will, because you know she loves me the most. But who else? I mean, I really think about these things. I'm not doing it to myself, guys. I'm just saying. But you'd be surprised after you die how many people actually want to give you flowers, and it's too late. So
Well,
if you're lonely, come talk to me. I don't have the papers, you know, but I'll talk to you if you have something to talk about. And call that number, and they'll be able to help you and give you things that can actually help you be better. It's not going to be an overnight journey. It's not going to be a flip of the switch. People who struggle with this take years and years to kind of get over certain things. You are depressed, something is missing. A hole in your life needs to be filled. And if you need help, please go out and get it. Don't think that you're good enough. Don't think that you have too much religion. You need help. And nothing can help you unless
no
you talk
shame
get
in it.
right. You need the help. So please go out there and get the help.
Hey,
If you're a family who is going through this, she said, she'll email me the information. I'll make sure I put it in down below of this program. If you're a family who's going through this, especially if you have young children, because they see things much differently, they don't understand what death really means. Please get the help for your family. Don't just wait and say, okay, this person died, we're sad about it, we move on. No, you're gonna have a hole in your life, and this might carry on again in somebody else in your family, because you might not be able to see the signs before it happens, you know. So make sure you get your whole family together. Make sure you all talk about it. If somebody in the family is feeling depressed, make sure that you get these tools that you can see the signs. Because some of these things, like people understand, alcoholism, DV, these things are cycles. This is not like, oh, one is a one-off. It's very rare certain things are one-off in families. These are generational problems. And if we don't catch the problem or can identify the problem in our family, in your family, things will go under the rug for years.
yeah.
And we don't want to see that anymore. We don't see broken homes. We don't want to see children being hurt. We don't want to see women being hurt. We want to be men being hurt. We want to see whole families. And society nowadays don't talk about the whole family, but the whole family makes the country runs better. The whole family just make communities run better. but we have a sense of relationship with each other. If a person you know out there don't have a family and you see they might become that friend. If you can't become a friend, get somebody who could help that person be better. And just, I know how it is to be depressed because I have depression and anxiety. I'm not going to claim that myself, but that's, I've been to counseling, stuff like that. And I usually get it, honestly, probably later in the year more than anything else, because the holiday season, and I feel like I just don't have enough. But if you need help and you need somebody to talk to, don't put your pride aside. Your pride need to go in the garbage. Go get, I want you to look at me in my eyes right now. Get the help that you need, please, because you are too special. You are too amazing not to get the help that you need, okay? And there's somebody out there, I promise you, who's loving you from afar and not even telling you that they love you. And we don't want to see or hear about another person hurting themselves. And I don't want to see another family being hurt because somebody else is that. Because you always really forget that after you're gone, people have to pick up the mess that you left behind. People have to literally know about where you were when it happened. Look at the letter that you wrote. If you left a note, they have if, ands, or buts. You see what her mother was going through. So please, 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 if you need help, please get the help. If you are in a DV situation, please get out of there. Because a person will. I know somebody who got shot down in Brooklyn. Thank God she's alive. She got shot down twice. I think the bullet went, 5 or 6 times, but the bullet actually catch her 2 times. That can affect you. Thank God she didn't have kids, so the kids didn't have to see her in this predicament. But whether you have kids or not, if somebody is financially doing something, physically talking bad about you, maybe it's time to go. Not maybe, it's time to go. And if you told them one time, don't talk to me that way, and they say, okay, baby, it's usually a cycle. It's usually buy gifts, but be nice to you, be mean to you, and then buy gifts to apologize. If too much apologies are happening, it's time for you to go. I'm sorry. We need to do better as a society. We need to keep people accountable. And if you cannot leave, if you just gotta say bye, Safe Horizon, I will have the information down below also. New Destiny, places like those. What can help you? If you're a person who's listening to this, who's an alcoholic, if you're drinking too much martinis in one day, I know this episode is very impactful with a lot of different things. Her life, as you can see, she went through a lot, and she doesn't look like what she went through, and I'm happy about that. She looks like an amazing person and is just doing amazing things, and she's helping to change people's lives. But if you are a person who knows somebody, or you're this person who's listening, and you're drinking way too much in the daytime, maybe you need to stop. Maybe what you're doing is not good for you. I'm just saying, get the help that you need. And if I can't help you. I can't help you with drink. I don't know what the disorder is about. People have just different. Some people also do because they have certain problems. Like her dad went to war. People try to do something to kind of put in the way of their feeling. No, you need to stop that thing. Stop using that vice. Stop using the drugs. Stop using something to harm your temple. This is your body. You only have one to spare, so you can't afford to be breaking it up. And go take care of yourself, please.
Please.
Please. And if you're a child who's a mom who's depressed, make sure you take care of your child's health. I'm just saying, her mother was a whole nurse and stuff still got. I know you're depressed. We have to get it together and take care of your kids. I'm just saying, it's just a thing. Take care of yourself too, because if you can't take care of your kids, the best if you don't take care of yourself. So have a little spa day. Put your kids in the after school program or something like that to make sure you can have time for yourself. And I know this for a fact. I don't take as much time as I need to. My daughter's with me literally everywhere I go, but you need time for yourself to breathe and woosah and just be clear. And making sure all homelessness look different. Don't judge people. Listen to their story. Help others. Be kind. Be amazing. Don't be a crummy person. We have enough people in the world who's doing bad. We have enough things happening around us. Don't be that person to make it worse. Be that person to make it better. But do you have any last words, Anne?
Thank you for being a person who's making it better.
Thank you.
Thank you. I learned today, and I appreciate you.
Thank you. Thank you for telling your story to us. As I said before in the beginning, this is her first time telling her story, and I hope that she could tell her story even more in depth. I hope she could learn more things about herself that she didn't realize. We all have stories. We're all different people, and a lot of us, they say homelessness usually age you, especially street homeless, more than other homelessness, and usually age you. And you have to grow up a lot of times before you have to grow up and do certain things because you have to survive. Make us just all be better humans, and we could make this world a much better place. But I thank you so much for your story. Thank you for deepening some. I hope you learned. As you said, you learned something. Hope you could get even deeper into the DV part of it. You just never know. And I hope that none of these things can negatively affecting your life right now. I hope you are in a better space in your life and with your son, and I hope everything works out for you as it is already, but even bigger and better things for you. That's what I'm saying.
Thank you. And I will send along to you also the information for the American Foundation for Suicide Prevention that has that outreach program for families, and the National Runaway Safeline for young people. And there's help out there, and it's hard to trust people because many of us have been disappointed by folks who are supposed to help us. But I hope if you're listening and you need the help, you can summon the energy to keep at it.
Yes. And also we have a giveaway, as I said.
Mm.
Go check it out on our social media. By now, we try to do a giveaway every couple of months to people in the shelter. We are not a big, well, the podcast part of it is not a big organization as yet, so we can only do but so much. We're trying to do our part to give away to families who deserve it. And so hopefully listen and tune in to any upcoming giveaways that we have. And thank you for being amazing. See you guys next time. Bye.
Bye, Kadisha.
I guess not. Does it not stop? Okay, I'll just press the button on top.